Good morning. Uh, I will call to order our regular meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee. Today is September 28th, 2017. I'm Lisa Bender. I chair the committee, and we have a quorum today with Council members Reich, Goodman, Andrew Johnson, and Council President Johnson. We have 4 items on our agenda today. All are on consent, but I will pull item 3 off for a discussion. I believe that's probably why most people are here as well. So item number 1 is a rezoning at 301 and 311 East Lake Street to C2. Item number 2 is a rezoning at 2550 Pillsbury Avenue to R4 to allow an opportunity to add more residential units to the building. Item number 4 is a referral to staff of an ordinance amending our zoning code related to pet boarding and animal shelters. So I'll move the consent items 1, 2, and 4. See if there's any discussion. Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those 3 items carry. And then we have item 3. We'll begin with a presentation from staff, and I believe Mr. Poor was going to give us an update, just kind of an overview of where this process is at. I'll note that we don't have a public hearing scheduled for this item today. So I know a number of folks are here interested in this item, and so we'll start with the staff presentation and go from there. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Bender. I think at this time I'm not sure we need to go through a full staff presentation. I guess what I'd rather do is say a couple things. One is that Homeand was introduced April 5th in 2016. There was a lot of work done around it with the community. It did go to a hearing. There was strong views on both sides. It's great to see that kind of passion about a neighborhood, that people care a lot about the history and the properties. And I appreciate folks who came down today to follow the process and be involved with it. I think at this time, staff does have a report, but we understand there's been some recent more comment coming in from the neighborhood. We understand that there may be more time, we could benefit from more time to gather more comment. One thing that is important that I want to say today, though, is that interim protection would expire on October 5th of this year. To date, we've had 37 certificates of no change. All of them have been approved. So even under interim protection, people have been able to do the changes and modifications to their properties going through that review. We've had 2 certificates of appropriateness. One, of course, was Estes Funeral Home, a major move that helped the community and part of a redevelopment scheme at that intersection. And those were both approved. The other was a single family on some window changes. So what I'd like to notify the council today is staff is going to let that interim protection expire. We don't think there's any significant properties or potential resources that are in imminent risk, and that if the guidelines are put in place early next year, there's no property that's we feel that'll be demolished within that time. So if the council's prerogative was to let this be referred back to council to gather more comment, we don't feel that we'd be putting any properties at risk. So really that's all I have, unless you have any other questions today.
Are there any questions for Mr. Poor?
Madam Chair.
Council President.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Poor, though, if somebody would apply for a demolition permit in that interim time, would they then there would be some review, would there not, even if the interim protection is gone?
Yeah.
I mean, I have single family homes that are.
The zoning administrator would still review it as a potential historic resource.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be on a case-by-case basis,
Sure.
and we would render that judgment. Everyone's a case-by-case, but I think the fact we're talking about the Homewood District is there's probably a high probability that we might determine that it needs to still go through a more intensive review.
Okay. All right.
Which is, again, why we feel like there's adequate protections in place that we can let interim protection lapse, and we're not really foregoing any review of any property yet.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll note that we're joined by Councilmember Yang, and would like to invite him to speak if you'd like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to address this committee. Certainly not in this committee, but really appreciate that opportunity. I will just say that this has been probably the most contentious issue in Ward 5 to come before the council while I've been a member of this council, and I understand that anything that dives as deeply into issues of race, class, religion, and private property as this is going to cause a lot of discord and there has been a lot of discord on this matter. In this, there is a great opportunity to preserve and to tell the story of the amazing community that is Homewood, but we clearly haven't hit on the right answer to that. We haven't hit on the right note. And, to what Mr. Poor has briefly talked about, I asked my colleagues to support referring this item back to the staff at CPED so they can work to find a much more delicate solution to this, one that respects neighbors' property rights, one that elaborates on the entire history of Homewood, and one that allows for opportunity and growth while still preserving the central character of Homewood. I support letting interim protection expire without any immediate action on historic designation, and I actually asked for it to be extended 6 months, but the expiration is fine. And let me just kind of close by just saying this, that I really appreciate staff for the incredible amount of work that they put into this. The report in itself was like 1,000 some odd pages. I mean, it was insane. I want to thank all the community members, those for and those against historic designation, for their commitment to this process, for the hours they've spent, and for their willingness to engage with the city on what can be a difficult and bureaucratic process. I think everyone's just not happy, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I know that people hold Homewood, really close to their hearts, and they have, interpretations of what Homewood means to them. And, they feel very strongly about, one side or the other. And, as a person who represents Ward 5 but does not live in Homewood, I don't have that sort of personal connection that the folks there do have. And, I find it hard to see that, I guess part of me had hoped that, folks would just come to some sort of consensus, or there would be a majority, one way or the other, and it would make things a lot easier, but that hasn't been the case. And, I think for myself, I've been trying to work on trying to buy more time so that we can find some sort of resolution, if anything. And, I think if we can't, part of me just feels that, maybe the next council member in Ward 5, whether it's me or anybody else, can make that decision and go with the folks here. So, that's kind of where I'm at. And again, I ask my colleagues to support the motion to refer this item back to staff for further work. And I can say I don't make this motion. I'm not a member of this committee, but I ask that my colleagues support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Yang. I'm happy to make the motion that Councilmember Yang described, which is to allow the interim protections to expire and to direct staff to do community engagement around the Homewood district.
Madam Chair, can I just clarify procedurally real quick? I apologize for interrupting you. There is no vote that's required by the committee on interim protection itself. That automatically happens. And in fact, in this case, I believe it's reached a period of 18 months for interim protection, which is all the ordinance provides for. So there would not be an opportunity to extend it, even if the committee so desired. So your vote today, or your motion today, does not need to reflect any considerations on interim protection per se. It would simply be a referral back to staff, or conceivably a continuance or some sort of affirmative vote if the committee so desired.
Okay. All right. Let's choose the motion that's referring back to staff, the district. Is there any comment from the committee? No, I can just add, I think that I have a lot of concerns about how we're approaching historic districts, particularly that are of cultural significance. I know when we did an historic district in my ward earlier this term, which was an architecturally significant district, I door knocked every door 2 times. I had a lot of questions and concerns from property owners about designation and what it meant for their property, and it takes a lot of work to answer all of those questions, even in a much more straightforward context. And when we looked at the Tilson built home district earlier this year, I think more time and care was given to trying to really engage the community from the very beginning. At the end of the day in that district, the council member and supported by the council ended up recommending to have about half of the homes designated, and then not designating the homes that were in the where the owner was in opposition to their own designation. So I just think that the process that we use right now to do outreach around historic districts, especially when we were looking at cultural districts and places where there are so many overlapping issues, probably needs to be more expanded to, from the beginning, make sure that we're really truly engaging the community. So I think it's the right thing to do at this time to regroup. I do think it's too bad that so long has gone by without that happening. But Council President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In trying to think my way through this too, I remember we had a historic inventory in the Camden, I think it was part of actually North Minneapolis historic review a number of years ago. And one of the things they looked at up in my neck of the woods was two neighborhoods, Shingle Creek and Lynn Bohannon, and said that the consultant said they had the single largest concentration of post-World War II housing in the city, story-and-a-half bungalows and then some ramblers. And, that's a unique resource also. I just think when I look at all the work that's been done on this, I think we are, I'm going to make a motion in addition to the chair's motion here that I like the words that Councilmember Yang used, kind of a more delicate solution to trying to preserve the integrity of some of these places that we have that are unique in Minneapolis, but yet allowing for the changes that people want to see to modernize, to repair, to update their homes. And I just think it's a real challenge. I ran into this when we were trying to do a historic designation of Victory Memorial Drive. And that was the big question, was do you include the houses in the district? In the end, we found out that Victory Memorial Drive actually sits in Robbinsdale, so we didn't have the authority to do it. But we did a state designation, but it doesn't include the houses. It doesn't include the houses. And I kind of sometimes wish it would when I see somebody paint one of their stucco houses an outrageous color, but again, it's a balance. It's a balance of people's ability, again, to, in particularly in modest places where people with modest incomes live, it's a real challenge to try to get to some of these historic repairs that can be quite costly. So I think it's a good solution to send it back to staff. I'd like to figure that if we could figure out a way that would be sensitive to property rights, as well as figuring out how to tell the story better about some of the unique places in this city. I think that would be helpful.
Councilmember Yang.
Yeah. Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to point out that, I think this idea of doing outreach, I love the idea, but the problem with that sometimes is that, in a process like this where it's a quasi-judicial process, as a council member, it's hard to be knocking on people's doors because people are going to ask what position you are on, and, you can't really say anything about that. And so, that just makes it hard because, if that wasn't kind of the handcuffs to my hands, I think I could easily door knock 254 houses in a weekend or two. That's not the issue. I think the issue is that, it's hard to engage folks when, it's a quasi-judicial process and you're the council member and people expect you to, do that. And I'd love to do that, but, I don't want to lose my vote on that as well. And so I think that's the part that has made it tough for me, at least, with regards to that. But, if there's a process by which, I can do that, I would love to do that. But thank you, though.
Okay, so Council President has distributed her motion, which reflects what she stated previously. So we have two motions. One is to refer the item back to staff, and the second is this motion to direct staff to work on community engagement and solutions that she described. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. That's our final item. We are adjourned. I just want to note again that since we didn't have a public hearing for this item today, if anyone has any questions for our staff, they are here, or Our council members I'm happy to stay and answer any questions if anyone would like. Thanks for coming today. Mr. Poor?
I just wanted to note, our staff member is here. He'll be available out in the hallway to meet with people, to set up contacts and forwarding information. So I'd encourage people who showed up to come and talk to Mr. Smoley after the hearing in the hallway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.